Karen lived in a quiet neighborhood where most of the homes looked alike. The houses had small gardens, short fences, and a few trees lined up along the sidewalks. She had lived there for nearly 10 years and believed she knew what was best for the community. That was why she had joined the Homeowners Association, or HOA. She enjoyed giving her opinions during meetings and often felt proud when her suggestions became rules for the residents. Karen believed she was protecting the neighborhood. She wanted lawns to be neat, driveways to be clear, and people to follow the community guidelines. Yet sometimes her behavior went beyond what was written in the rules. She watched people from her window and corrected them even when they were not breaking any guideline. Some neighbors had started avoiding her because of this. They smiled politely but kept their distance. Karen, however, thought she was only keeping the place safe and orderly. One warm Saturday afternoon, the sun was bright, and children were riding bicycles near the park. A new family had recently moved into the neighborhood. The woman's name was Lena. She had a warm smile and often waved at people she saw, but many did not know much about her yet. She had not attended any HOA meetings, and she spent most of her mornings walking or jogging. Lena loved the outdoors and believed exercise helped her stay calm. That day, Lena walked back home from the small store at the corner. She carried a shopping bag with bread, milk, and a few fruits. As she reached the pathway near her house, she noticed Karen standing near the sidewalk. Karen was watching with her usual sharp eyes, holding her phone as if she were ready to report something. Karen had convinced herself that Lena often ignored the neighborhood rules. She thought Lena parked her car too close to the curb, left her trash bin out for too long, and even doubted if Lena truly lived in the house she claimed. None of this was proven, but Karen's mind was filled with suspicion. She believed it was her responsibility to question anything unusual. "Excuse me," Karen said firmly as Lena walked closer. Lena stopped and looked at her with a polite smile. "Yes? Are you aware of the HOA rules about leaving bags outside or walking through the side paths?" Karen asked in a sharp tone. Lena frowned lightly but kept her calm. "I am just coming from the store. I live here, so I am only walking to my house." Karen folded her arms. "I do not think I have seen you at any HOA meetings. People who live here usually attend. Are you sure you belong to this community?" Lena blinked in surprise. "Yes, I live here. My husband and I moved in a few weeks ago. We are still settling down." Karen studied her face as if searching for proof. Her suspicion only grew. She felt that Lena was being dismissive and hiding something. The thought of losing control or allowing someone to bend the rules troubled her deeply. "Do you have any identification with you?" Karen asked suddenly. Lena looked shocked. "Identification? I am walking home with groceries. Why would I carry documents for a short walk?" Karen stepped closer. "Because I do not know who you are. People need to follow the rules here. We cannot have strangers walking around." Lena sighed and shook her head. "I think you are mistaken. I live here and I am not doing anything wrong. Please let me go home." Karen's face tightened with frustration. She felt disrespected, as if her authority was being ignored. She noticed Lena was calm and confident, which only fueled her irritation. A thought crossed her mind that perhaps Lena was trying to challenge her in front of others. Some neighbors were passing by at a distance, and Karen felt embarrassed. She pulled out a small can of pepper spray from her bag. She always carried it, telling herself it was for safety. Lena stepped back in alarm. "What are you doing?" "I am making sure this neighborhood is safe," Karen replied. Her voice was sharp and her hand shook slightly, but she tried to appear firm. Before Lena could move further, Karen raised the can and sprayed. The mist reached Lena's face and she cried out in pain. She dropped her grocery bag, covering her eyes and coughing. The fruits rolled onto the sidewalk and the milk carton burst open, spilling on the ground. A couple of neighbors who had been nearby rushed over. "What happened?" "What are you doing?" one man shouted at Karen. "She was trespassing," Karen said quickly. "I do not think she lives here. I was protecting the community." But Lena, struggling to breathe, cried out, "I live here. Please, I live here." Tears streamed down her face as she stumbled toward the edge of her lawn. A woman who lived across the street hurried to help Lena. She guided her to sit on the steps and poured water from a bottle over her eyes. The crowd around them grew, with people whispering in shock. "Karen, that was too much," another neighbor said sternly. "She is not a stranger. She and her husband just moved into the house on Oak Street." Karen's face paled, but she refused to accept fault. If that is true, then she should have said so more clearly. People need to respect the rules. I cannot take chances. Lena could barely speak, but she managed to say, I told you. I live here. My husband is away today, but we both live in that house. You attacked me for no reason. The atmosphere grew tense. Some neighbors shook their heads at Karen, while others tried to comfort Lena. A few suggested calling the police, but Lena raised her hand weakly. She did not want things to get worse. Instead, she whispered, Please, I need to rest. My husband will handle this when he returns. At that moment, no one knew much about her husband. They only knew he had a job that required him to be away often. But Lena's words carried quiet confidence, and it left the neighbors wondering. Karen stood frozen. For the first time, doubt crept into her mind. What if she had truly made a mistake? What if this woman was indeed a rightful resident? She wanted to defend herself, but the eyes of the crowd made her uneasy. She muttered something about only doing her duty and walked away quickly toward her home. Lena, with the help of others, was guided back to her house. She sat on the couch, shaken but determined. She thought of her husband, Daniel, who was returning home soon after weeks of being away. He had always told her that dignity and calmness were stronger than anger. She planned to tell him everything once he arrived. Outside, the neighborhood buzzed with conversations. Some defended Karen, saying she acted out of concern, while others criticized her for crossing the line. The incident had divided opinions, but one thing was certain. The calm life of the community had been shaken. By evening, the story had spread to almost every corner of the neighborhood. People spoke in hushed voices about how Karen had pepper-sprayed a new resident. Many wondered what would happen next. None of them knew yet that Lena's husband was not an ordinary man. He was an army lieutenant, and his return would change everything. The evening air in the neighborhood carried a heavy silence. Children who usually laughed and played in the park were called home earlier than usual. People who usually watered their plants or chatted across fences now stood in small groups, whispering about what had happened that afternoon. Lena sat quietly on her living room couch, her eyes still sore from the pepper spray. A cool towel rested on her face, and beside her sat Mrs. Patel, an older woman from across the street who had come to check on her. Mrs. Patel had lived in the community for many years, and she was known for her kindness. You need rest, my dear, Mrs. Patel said softly. Your husband will be home soon? You should not worry too much right now. Lena managed a weak smile. Thank you for helping me. I did not expect something like this to happen. I only went to buy some bread. Mrs. Patel patted her hand. Some people believe they are protecting rules when they are only hurting others. You have done nothing wrong. The truth will come out. As the sun began to set, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway brought Lena to her feet. She quickly removed the towel from her face and went to the door. Her heart lifted when she saw her husband Daniel step out of the car. He was wearing his uniform, his posture straight and confident. His face brightened when he saw Lena, but the smile quickly faded as he noticed her red eyes and the worried look on her face. Lena, what happened? Daniel asked as he rushed toward her. She tried to stay calm, but her voice shook. Something happened today. Please come inside. I will tell you everything. They entered the house and Daniel sat beside her, holding her hands gently. Mrs. Patel quietly excused herself, giving them privacy but not before whispering to Daniel, Your wife has been through a lot today. Take care of her. Daniel nodded gratefully. Once they were alone, Lena began to explain. She told him how she had returned from the store, how Karen had stopped her, accused her, and then sprayed her without warning. She described the pain, the shock, and the humiliation of being treated like a stranger in her own neighborhood. Daniel listened without interrupting, but his jaw tightened with each word. His hands remained steady, yet his eyes grew sharper. He was not only a husband, but also an army lieutenant, trained to remain calm in stressful situations. But hearing that his wife had been attacked filled him with anger that he struggled to control. Did anyone help you? He asked quietly. Yes, Lena replied. Some neighbors came. Mrs. Patel poured water on my face and others stood by me. But Karen said she was protecting the community. She believed I did not belong here. Daniel stood and began pacing the room. Protecting the community? By attacking you without proof? That is not protection, that is recklessness. He stopped and looked at Lena, his voice firm but calm. You did the right thing by not calling the police immediately. But this will not end here. People must understand that actions like this have consequences. Lena touched his arm. I do not want more trouble. But I also cannot let her think it was acceptable. Everyone in the neighborhood is already talking about it. Daniel placed his hand over hers. Do not worry. I will handle this with dignity. Tomorrow I will speak to the HOA and to Karen directly. She must face the truth. That night, Lena finally felt safe knowing her husband was by her side. Yet sleep came slowly, and when it did, it was filled with uneasy dreams. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing even more than before. People peeked out of their windows and whispered as Daniel stepped outside. He was dressed neatly, though not in his uniform. His calm but commanding presence made people straighten their backs when he passed. Some greeted him politely, others stayed quiet, unsure of what he might do. Daniel walked with Lena to the small community hall where the HOA often held its meetings. Karen was already there, speaking to two other members about safety concerns. She looked surprised when Daniel and Lena entered together. Daniel spoke clearly. Good morning. I am Daniel, Lena's husband.
I believe you know who I am now? Karen's lips pressed tightly.
She glanced around, noticing that other neighbors were slowly gathering, curious to see what would happen. Daniel continued, his voice calm but filled with authority. Yesterday my wife was returning from the store when you stopped her. You accused her of not belonging here and then used pepper spray on her. Is that correct? Karen shifted uncomfortably. I acted in the interest of the community. I thought she might be trespassing. I had to make sure. Daniel's eyes stayed fixed on her. Did she threaten you? Did she act in any way that was dangerous? Karen hesitated. No, but then why did you use force? Daniel asked firmly. My wife told you she lived here. She was carrying groceries. Yet you chose to attack her. That is not protection. That is abuse of authority. The room grew silent. People listened carefully, some nodding in agreement with Daniel's words. Karen tried to defend herself. I only wanted to keep the neighborhood safe. I thought she should have shown identification. Daniel took a deep breath. This is not a military checkpoint. This is a neighborhood. No one should be forced to carry identification to walk to their own house. Your actions caused harm and my wife still suffers from it. What will you do to make this right? Karen's face flushed. She was not used to being questioned so directly. For years she had acted as if her word was final. Now, with Daniel standing before her, she felt cornered. One of the HOA members, Mr. Lewis, spoke up. Karen, I think we all agree that what happened was unacceptable. You went too far. The HOA cannot support this kind of behavior. Another neighbor added, We have rules, yes, but they are meant to guide us, not to harm each other. Lena and Daniel are part of this community. We should have welcomed them, not attacked them. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but the looks around the room stopped her. She realized she no longer had the support she once enjoyed. Daniel's voice softened, but it carried weight. We are not asking for special treatment. We only want respect and fairness. If you truly care about this neighborhood, you must understand that safety is built on trust, not suspicion. Lena, who had stayed quiet until then, spoke gently. I moved here with hope that this community would be friendly. I still believe it can be. But what happened yesterday must never happen again to anyone. The room filled with murmurs of agreement. Some neighbors even clapped softly, showing their support. Karen lowered her eyes, realizing the strength of their words. Daniel concluded, I will not take legal action today. But let this be clear. If something like this happens again, I will not remain silent. My duty as a husband and as an officer is to protect my family. With that, he took Lena's hand and together they left the hall. The crowd parted, some offering smiles of encouragement, others whispering about how the situation had turned. Outside, Lena looked at Daniel with gratitude. You spoke with such calm strength. You made them listen. Daniel smiled faintly. Strength is not only in force. It is in standing firm with dignity. Now the neighborhood knows the truth. We will see how they choose to act in the days to come. As they walked back to their home, people they had barely spoken to before greeted them warmly. Some apologized for not stepping in sooner, while others promised that they would make the community more welcoming. Karen, however, stood by the hall window, watching them leave. For the first time, she felt unsure of her place. The authority she had enjoyed for years was slipping from her hands. She knew people would now question her more often, and she struggled to imagine what her role in the community would become. The sun shone brightly, casting light across the neat lawns and trimmed hedges of the neighborhood. Yet beneath the calm surface, change had begun. The incident was no longer just about one mistake. It had opened a door to questions of fairness, respect, and the true meaning of community. And in the middle of it all stood Lena and Daniel, determined to live with peace but ready to face whatever challenges came next. The neighborhood seemed quieter the next morning, yet there was an undercurrent of tension. People whispered as they stepped outside, glancing toward Lena and Daniel's house. Some were curious, others were cautious. Karen, meanwhile, felt unsettled. The events of the past 2 days had shaken her confidence, and the realization that her actions were being watched made her uneasy. Karen sat in her living room, flipping through HOA documents. She tried to convince herself that she had done the right thing, but deep down a knot of doubt had formed. She remembered Daniel's calm but firm words and the way the neighbors had quietly supported Lena. Karen realized her reputation had shifted, and she did not like it. Meanwhile, Lena and Daniel tried to return to normal life. Lena opened her windows to let sunlight fill the house. She unpacked a few boxes, arranging things with care. The small kitchen smelled of fresh bread and fruits, and she smiled faintly, feeling a sense of safety at home. Daniel checked his emails and messages, but he kept one eye on the neighborhood. He wanted to ensure Lena would not face another encounter like yesterday. Even though they tried to live normally, the incident had become the topic of conversation in the community. Neighbors discussed it quietly over coffee or while watering their gardens. Opinions were divided. Some still supported Karen, believing she acted out of concern. Others thought her actions were extreme and dangerous. One neighbor, Mrs. Chang, approached Lena in the morning as she watered her small garden. "I am so sorry for what happened," she said. "I did not know Karen would act this way." "You do not deserve to be treated like that," Lena nodded. "Thank you. I hope we can all move forward peacefully. I just want to live in a friendly neighborhood." Mrs. Chang smiled softly. "I will do my best to help. Many people here are kind once they understand the truth." Across the street, Karen decided to take action. She felt the community was now questioning her authority, and that made her defensive. She called a meeting with the HOA members, insisting that they discuss safety concerns and Lena's place in the neighborhood. She wanted to remind them of her years of service and her dedication. The HOA meeting took place in the small hall that evening. Most of the members were present, including Daniel, who attended to support Lena. Karen began the meeting with a sharp tone, emphasizing the importance of neighborhood rules and claiming that recent events had highlighted the need for vigilance. Daniel listened quietly. When Karen referred to Lena as a new resident causing concern, he raised his hand calmly. "If I may," he said, and the room grew silent. "My wife has done nothing wrong. She follows the rules, respects the community, and contributes positively wherever she can. The issue yesterday was not her actions, but a misunderstanding and an overreaction." Karen's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. "I only acted to protect the neighborhood. People must follow the rules. Otherwise, chaos can happen." Daniel's voice remained steady. "Protection does not mean causing harm. Community safety is about respect, not fear. My wife was attacked, and you must acknowledge that your actions were wrong." The room shifted uncomfortably. Some members looked at Karen with concern while others whispered among themselves. The meeting, which Karen expected to strengthen her position, was beginning to work against her. One of the HOA members, Mr. Lewis, spoke up. "Karen, I think everyone here needs to be reminded that rules exist for guidance, not for punishment. We cannot allow personal judgment to cause harm. Lena and Daniel are part of this community. They deserve respect." Karen's face flushed with anger, but she clenched her hands tightly. "I am only trying to do my duty. If people do not see that, then they are blind to the risks." Daniel walked closer, maintaining a calm presence. "Being part of this community means building trust. Yesterday's incident has shaken that trust. You need to apologize and make sure it never happens again." Karen hesitated, realizing that most members were looking at her with disappointment. The meeting ended with a consensus that Karen needed to take responsibility for her actions, and she left the hall quietly. Her pride hurt, but her position weakened. After the meeting, Lena and Daniel returned home. They walked through the quiet streets, noticing neighbors greeting them with friendly nods. Some even smiled warmly, offering a sign of support. The neighborhood, they realized, was beginning to change. However, not everyone was happy. A few neighbors still whispered in support of Karen, believing she acted out of caution. Tension simmered beneath the surface, and Daniel knew that the peace they had hoped for would take time. Lena tried to focus on positive things. She planted flowers along the walkway, arranging them in bright colors to welcome sunlight into their yard. Children played nearby and some even waved as they passed. The small gestures reminded Lena that kindness could grow even in challenging circumstances. Daniel, meanwhile, planned steps to ensure the neighborhood remained safe without creating fear. He spoke with HOA members privately, discussing rules that were fair, clear, and based on mutual respect. He emphasized that the community needed guidance but not judgment. Karen, on the other hand, struggled with her own feelings. She had always seen herself as a protector, but the events had forced her to reconsider her approach. She realized that her actions, though intended as safety measures, had caused harm and division. Yet pride and habit made it difficult for her to apologize fully. Days passed and the neighborhood slowly began to adjust. Daniel and Lena continued their routine. Daniel would sometimes walk with Lena in the mornings, greeting neighbors politely. Lena would bake small treats and share them with people nearby. These gestures, small as they were, helped ease tensions and slowly changed opinions. Karen observed these changes with a mix of emotions. She noticed neighbors treating Lena and Daniel with warmth, yet she felt left out. Her authority had diminished and she struggled to regain the respect she once had. She wondered if she could ever restore the image she had built for herself over years. One afternoon, Lena invited Karen to her house. She wanted to extend a gesture of peace, hoping that reconciliation could begin. Karen arrived hesitantly, unsure of what to expect. Lena greeted her warmly. "Thank you for coming, Karen. I hope we can talk calmly." Karen nodded, unsure how to respond. Lena offered tea and snacks, creating a quiet, friendly space. "I want to move forward peacefully," Lena began. "Yesterday was difficult for both of us, but we can still build a community where everyone feels safe and respected." Karen looked at her, her voice softening slightly. I did not mean to cause harm. I thought I was doing the right thing." "I see now that I overreacted," Lena smiled gently. "I understand. I hope we can learn from this and make our neighborhood better for everyone." Karen nodded, a sense of relief washing over her. She realized that admitting her mistake and working together could restore some of the harmony she had lost. As Karen left, she felt a mix of emotions: shame, relief, and hope. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she was willing to try. That evening, Daniel and Lena sat on their porch watching the sunset. The neighborhood was calm and the sky glowed with warm colors. "We have made some progress," Lena said softly. Daniel nodded. "Yes, but we must remain patient. Change takes time and people will need reminders that respect is more important than fear." Lena smiled. "I believe we can do it. The community can learn, and maybe even Karen will understand that kindness and patience are stronger than rules alone." Daniel reached for her hand. "Together we can face whatever comes next. We will protect this home and our peace, but we will do it with dignity." The sun disappeared below the horizon, and the neighborhood grew quiet. Yet beneath the calm surface, new bonds were forming. People who had witnessed the incident were starting to see a different side of the community, one of understanding, patience, and cooperation. And though challenges remained, Lena and Daniel knew that by standing firm with calm strength, they could influence the neighborhood positively, guiding it toward fairness and harmony. The neighborhood slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. Children played in the park, neighbors tended to their gardens, and the usual hum of conversation filled the streets once again. Yet beneath the surface, subtle tension remained. Karen had returned to her routine but approached it cautiously, aware that her authority was no longer absolute. She watched the neighborhood with the same keen eyes, but she hesitated before acting. Lena and Daniel continued to grow comfortable in their home. They had begun introducing themselves to more neighbors, sharing small moments of kindness. Lena would sometimes bring freshly baked muffins or cookies to the street, leaving them with notes saying, "Welcome to a peaceful neighborhood." Daniel, meanwhile, took walks with a purposeful calmness, always ready to greet residents with polite words and warm smiles. Their presence gradually reminded everyone that safety could be achieved through understanding and respect, not fear. One sunny morning, a delivery truck stopped near Lena and Daniel's house. A package for Lena had arrived, and she stepped outside to receive it. As she signed the delivery form, she noticed Karen watching from across the street. Karen's expression was unreadable, neither openly angry nor friendly. Lena waved politely, and Karen gave a brief nod before walking away. Later that day, Daniel suggested they host a small neighborhood gathering. "It is a good way to bring people together," he said. "If we show kindness, perhaps it will encourage cooperation and understanding." Lena smiled. "Yes, it will also give us a chance to address small misunderstandings before they grow." They began preparing for the gathering. Lena baked bread and pastries while Daniel set up chairs in their yard. Notices were quietly delivered to neighbors, inviting them to join for tea, snacks, and friendly conversation. Most neighbors were curious and willing to attend, including some who had quietly supported Karen, though they approached the gathering with caution. The day of the gathering arrived, and the yard was filled with sunlight and colorful flowers. Small tables held baked treats, tea, and juice. Children ran around the lawn laughing, while adults gathered in small groups chatting and sharing stories. Karen arrived later than most, hesitant and unsure of her place. She glanced at Daniel and Lena, then at the neighbors already mingling. Daniel approached her gently. "Karen, thank you for coming. We hope this gathering can be a chance to bring everyone together." Karen hesitated, then nodded. I hope so too." The morning passed slowly but pleasantly. Neighbors shared small moments of friendship, exchanged greetings, and learned more about each other. Karen observed quietly, her usual stern demeanor softening as she noticed the warmth in the interactions. However, not all tensions had disappeared. A few neighbors whispered doubts about Lena and Daniel, questioning whether they were trying to gain influence in the HOA. Karen, who had been a source of fear and authority, noticed these whispers and felt a small spark of vindication. She reminded herself that she still had some control. Later in the afternoon, a sudden commotion disrupted the gathering. A child had tripped and scraped her knee near the sidewalk, crying loudly. Neighbors rushed to help, and Lena guided the child to a safe spot, while Daniel brought water and a clean cloth. Karen observed, her expression shifting from skepticism to quiet surprise. She realized that Lena and Daniel handled the situation calmly and effectively. One of the parents, Mr. Sharma, approached Karen. "It is remarkable how they handled the situation," he said softly. "It reminds us that patience and calmness can resolve problems better than force or fear." Karen's face reflected a mixture of frustration and reflection. She realized that the power she once relied upon, strict rules and immediate action, was not the only way to maintain a peaceful neighborhood. By evening, the gathering had come to a close. Neighbors began returning to their homes, some expressing gratitude for the thoughtful hospitality, others carrying a new understanding of how to approach disagreements with calmness and respect. Karen walked back to her house deep in thought. She knew she needed to reconsider her approach to her role in the HOA and her relationship with the neighbors. The next day brought a new challenge. A small fire had started in the garden of one of the nearby houses. Smoke rose into the sky, drawing attention from the street. Residents quickly called the fire department and helped move belongings to safety. Daniel and Lena were among the first to respond. Daniel directed neighbors to move items out of danger, while Lena helped calm frightened children. Their actions were deliberate, organized, and effective. The fire department arrived shortly afterward and controlled the blaze before it could cause major damage. After the fire, neighbors gathered to discuss what had happened. Many praised Daniel and Lena for their quick thinking and leadership. Karen, too, was present but remained quiet, observing the interactions. She noticed that respect was no longer based on fear or rules alone. It was earned through action and composure. Later that evening, Daniel spoke with Lena privately. "The fire was a test in a way," he said calmly. "It shows that trust and cooperation are more important than authority alone. If we continue to act with patience and respect, we can guide this neighborhood toward lasting harmony." Lena nodded. "Yes, it is reassuring to see people responding positively, even after everything that happened before." Karen, in her own house, reflected on the events of the past days. The fire had shaken her usual confidence in control and rules. She realized that her strict approach, though well-intentioned, had caused harm and tension. The presence of Lena and Daniel had introduced a different type of leadership, one based on respect, calmness, and action rather than fear. Over the next few weeks, small changes became evident. Neighbors who had been distant began interacting more with Lena and Daniel. Karen herself began to soften, observing how gentle guidance could achieve results without causing conflict. Though it was difficult for her to admit, She slowly recognized the value of cooperation and empathy. One afternoon, as Karen tended to her garden, Lena approached with a friendly smile. "Good morning, Karen," she said politely. "I wanted to share some flowers with you. They are from my garden." Karen accepted the flowers, her expression hesitant but warm. "Thank you, Lena. That is very thoughtful of you." Lena continued, "I hope we can continue to work together to make this neighborhood a welcoming place for everyone." Karen nodded slowly. I would like that." She realized that reconciliation was possible if she approached it with humility and openness. Daniel watched from a distance, satisfied with the progress. He understood that change was gradual and that patience and consistency were key. He also knew that challenges would continue to arise, but he felt confident that the neighborhood was on the right path. By the end of the month, the neighborhood had begun to settle into a calmer, more cooperative rhythm. Children played openly, neighbors greeted each other warmly, and Karen had taken steps to repair her relationships. The incidents of the past, the pepper spray and misunderstandings, were no longer immediate sources of fear, though they remained lessons for everyone. Lena and Daniel continued their efforts to maintain peace, hosting small gatherings, offering help, and modeling calm leadership. Their presence had slowly transformed the community, showing that true safety came from mutual respect, not control or suspicion. Karen, observing these changes, began to adapt. She realized that her authority did not need to be feared to be effective. Instead, she could guide with wisdom, humility, and care. It was a difficult lesson, but one that promised long-term benefit for the neighborhood. As the sun set on another peaceful evening, Lena and Daniel stood on their porch, watching children play and neighbors greet each other. The neighborhood was not perfect, but it had begun a journey toward harmony, understanding, and cooperation. And at the heart of this change was the quiet, steady leadership of two people determined to protect their home and community with patience, dignity, and respect. The neighborhood had changed in subtle but meaningful ways. Children laughed freely in the park, neighbors waved as they passed each other, and small acts of kindness had begun to define daily life. Lena and Daniel's calm and steady presence continued to influence the community, teaching patience, understanding, and cooperation. Karen, too, had begun to change. She still maintained her attention to rules and order, but her approach had softened. She no longer acted on suspicion alone and had begun to observe situations before intervening. Slowly, she realized that her authority was more effective when paired with respect rather than fear. One bright morning, Lena and Daniel decided to host a community breakfast on the weekend. The idea was simple, a gathering where neighbors could enjoy food, share stories, and strengthen their relationships. Notices were delivered to every house, and excitement grew as word spread. Many residents who had once been skeptical of Lena and Daniel were now eager to participate. Karen received her invitation and hesitated for a moment. She had mixed feelings about attending, unsure if she would feel embarrassed or welcomed. After some thought, she decided to go. She wanted to observe and learn, perhaps even take part in the new spirit of cooperation that was growing in the neighborhood. On the day of the breakfast, the yard of Lena and Daniel's house was filled with sunlight and colorful flowers. Tables were arranged neatly, holding baskets of bread, fruits, pastries, and cups of tea. The aroma of freshly baked goods mixed with the morning air, inviting everyone to join. Neighbors began arriving in small groups. Children ran freely, chasing each other around the lawn while adults found spots to sit and chat. Smiles were shared, stories were exchanged, and laughter filled the air. Lena and Daniel moved among the guests, greeting everyone warmly, helping children find seats, and making sure the environment felt welcoming and safe. Karen arrived a little later, walking slowly and quietly. She noticed the warmth in the gathering and felt slightly out of place at first. Daniel noticed her and approached with a polite smile. "Karen, thank you for coming," he said calmly. "I hope you can enjoy this breakfast with us and the neighbors." Karen nodded, her expression cautious. I appreciate the invitation. It looks like everyone is having a good time." Daniel gestured toward the tables. "Please join us. This is a chance for everyone to come together as a community." Karen took a deep breath and walked toward the tables. She found a seat next to Mrs. Patel and began to interact with a few neighbors. At first, the conversation was tentative. But soon she found herself laughing softly at a story one of the parents told about their child's antics in the park. She realized that connection and understanding could replace suspicion and criticism. The morning passed pleasantly. Neighbors shared food, exchanged stories, and helped each other. Lena noticed that Karen was gradually joining conversations, listening carefully, and even offering her own input. Daniel watched from a distance, proud of the progress that was unfolding. During the breakfast, Daniel addressed the gathering briefly. "I want to thank everyone for coming today. This is more than a breakfast. It is an opportunity to build a community where respect, cooperation, and kindness guide our interactions. Let us remember that our strength lies in understanding each other, not in fear or suspicion." The neighbors nodded in agreement. Many applauded quietly, and some whispered words of encouragement to each other. Karen listened carefully, realizing that Daniel's words applied to her as much as anyone else. She felt a sense of humility and a quiet desire to do better. After the breakfast, Lena suggested a small neighborhood cleanup event. "We can work together to make our surroundings more beautiful," she said. "It will also give us a chance to connect and support each other." Neighbors agreed enthusiastically. Children helped pick up litter. Adults trimmed hedges and bushes, and everyone contributed in small ways. Karen participated as well, carefully raking leaves and arranging flowers along the pathways. She began to feel a sense of belonging, understanding that cooperation could be as powerful as rules. During the cleanup, a small mishap occurred. A tree branch fell near one of the children, startling the group. Without hesitation, Daniel quickly moved the child to safety and directed others to clear the area. Lena calmed the frightened children, holding their hands and speaking softly to reassure them. The neighbors watched and learned. Action guided by calmness and concern for others had a stronger impact than panic or fear. By the end of the event, the neighborhood looked more vibrant. The pathways were clean, flowers bloomed brightly, and the residents had shared hours of meaningful connection. Karen stood back for a moment, observing the transformation. She realized that leadership and respect did not require strict enforcement of rules alone. They required patience, empathy, and understanding. In the following weeks, the neighborhood continued to thrive. Neighbors shared meals, helped each other with chores, and supported one another in small ways. Lena and Daniel's approach had inspired others to act with kindness, and Karen had learned to balance her attention to rules with compassion. The community was no longer divided by suspicion and fear. It had become a place where people could feel safe, respected, and connected. One afternoon, as Lena watered her garden, Karen approached with a small pot of flowers. "I thought you might like these," Karen said softly. Lena accepted them with a smile. "Thank you, Karen, that is very thoughtful of you." Karen hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I want to apologize for my actions before. I realize now that I overreacted and caused harm. I hope we can move forward as neighbors and work together." Lena placed her hand gently on Karen's arm. "Thank you for saying that. I believe we can all learn from our mistakes and build a stronger community together." The two women shared a quiet moment, understanding that reconciliation was possible and that cooperation could lead to lasting harmony. Meanwhile, Daniel observed from the porch. He felt proud of the changes in the neighborhood and the growth he had seen in both Lena and Karen. The challenges they had faced had tested patience and understanding, but the results were clear. The community was stronger, more connected, and more respectful than ever before. As the sun set that evening, the neighborhood glowed with warmth. Families gathered on porches, children played in the fading light, and neighbors waved to each other with genuine smiles. The events of the past weeks, the misunderstandings, the tension, and the challenges had become lessons that everyone could learn from. Daniel and Lena stood together on their porch, watching the calm and harmonious scene. "We have come a long way," Lena said softly. Daniel nodded. "Yes, it is not perfect, but we have built something meaningful. Respect, patience, and understanding have guided us, and the neighborhood has responded. This is what true community looks like," Lena smiled. "And Karen, she has changed too. I think she understands now that leadership is not about fear, but about guiding people with care and humility." Daniel placed his arm around Lena. "Yes, we have all learned something valuable. Challenges will always come, but if we face them with patience, empathy, and courage, we can handle anything. That night, the neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, and safe. The events that had once caused fear and tension were now reminders of growth, understanding, and the power of calm leadership. Lena and Daniel knew that their home and community were stronger because of the lessons learned and the bonds that had formed. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood continued to flourish. Children played, neighbors shared meals and laughter, and small acts of kindness became the norm. Karen continued to participate in HOA meetings, but with a softer voice, focusing on guidance rather than strict enforcement. She learned to listen, observe, and act with thoughtfulness. Lena and Daniel became role models not only for their immediate neighbors, but for anyone who witnessed their actions. Their approach demonstrated that patience, respect, and empathy could transform tension into cooperation, conflict into understanding, and fear into trust. As the sun rose each morning, the neighborhood awoke to a new sense of harmony. The houses stood neatly, the gardens bloomed brightly, and the streets echoed with the sounds of community and friendship. Lena and Daniel, standing together in their yard, smiled as they watched the world around them. Their home had become more than a place to live. It had become a symbol of hope, courage, and the power of unity. And in that neighborhood, people learned an important truth, that peace is built not by fear or control, but by respect, understanding, and the willingness to act with kindness. The story of Lena, Daniel, and even Karen became a quiet lesson for everyone, a story of growth, reconciliation, and the enduring strength of a community guided by empathy and care. The neighborhood was no longer divided. It was whole, connected, and strong, and at the center of it all stood Lena and Daniel, guardians not by force but by example, showing that calmness, patience, and understanding could shape the future and make a lasting difference in the lives of everyone around them.